Have you ever had a woman suddenly change her behavior toward you for no apparent reason? Maybe she canceled plans last minute, took hours to respond to your messages, or brought up her ex in conversation out of nowhere. Most guys interpret these situations as random female behavior or clear signs of disinterest. But what if I told you these aren't random at all, but carefully designed psychological tests that women use to evaluate your character, confidence, and emotional stability? Understanding these hidden tests is like discovering the answers to an exam before you take it. Once you recognize what's really happening, everything changes. The painful truth is that most men fail these tests without ever realizing they were being evaluated in the first place. Women don't test men to be manipulative or play games. They test because they have to. Throughout evolutionary history, women faced enormous consequences for choosing the wrong partner. Pregnancy, limited resources, and vulnerability created a biological imperative to accurately assess a man's true character before investing emotionally. These tests aren't conscious strategies. They were deeply ingrained psychological mechanisms designed to reveal what a man is really made of when faced with challenge, uncertainty, or emotional pressure. The fascinating reality is that these tests happen most frequently with men. Women are genuinely interested in. The more she cares, the more crucial it becomes to know who you really are beneath the surface. After studying thousands of these interactions and coaching men through these exact scenarios, I've identified the 7 most common tests women use to evaluate men, and more importantly, exactly how to recognize and pass them with confidence. Once you understand these patterns, you'll never be confused by seemingly contradictory female behavior again. You'll see these tests for what they really are: opportunities to demonstrate your value rather than traps designed to diminish it. Let's break down the first major sign she's secretly testing you: the sudden communication pullback. When a woman who's been consistently responsive and engaged suddenly becomes distant, takes hours to respond to messages, or gives minimal replies to your questions, most men make a critical mistake. They either chase harder, sending multiple messages and asking what's wrong, or they mirror her coldness and pull away completely. Both responses fail the underlying test. What's really happening is a subconscious evaluation of your emotional stability and neediness. Can you maintain composure when the validation flow stops? Or will you become anxious, demanding, or passive-aggressive when her attention isn't freely given? Brandon from Boston experienced this exact scenario with a woman he'd been dating for several weeks. Their communication had been consistent and enthusiastic until she suddenly began taking hours to respond with minimal engagement. His instinct was to send follow-up messages asking if everything was okay, which only made the situation worse. When we identified this as a classic test rather than genuine disinterest, he completely shifted his approach. Instead of reacting to her changed behavior, he maintained his normal rhythm and emotional tone, responding warmly but not over-pursuing. Within days, her engagement returned to previous levels, and she later admitted she'd been concerned he might be too needy based on a previous relationship experience. The test was already malicious. It was her unconscious way of verifying his emotional solidity. The second powerful sign she's testing you is the introduction of competition or jealousy scenarios. When a woman casually mentions male attention she's receiving, brings up an ex-partner in conversation, or talks about someone who asked her out, this rarely happens by accident. This isn't meant to hurt you. It's designed to evaluate your confidence and security. Will you become visibly jealous, interrogate her about these other men, or try to verbally establish dominance? Or will you remain unaffected, confident in your value, regardless of potential competition? Ryan from Chicago faced this test when the woman he was dating began frequently mentioning a coworker who was clearly interested in her. His natural reaction was to become tense, ask probing questions about their interactions, and subtly put the other guy down. This response actually created doubts rather than alleviating them. When we identified this as a classic competition test, he completely recalibrated his approach. The next time she mentioned the coworker, he responded with relaxed confidence, even joking that the guy clearly has good taste, before smoothly changing the subject. Her testing comments about the coworker stopped almost immediately, and their connection deepened significantly in the following weeks. The third significant sign she's secretly testing you appears through intentional inconvenience or plan changes. When a woman cancels plans last minute, changes agreed-upon details, or creates logistical challenges, It's easy to interpret this as flakiness or lack of interest. But in many cases, this is actually a subconscious test of your adaptability and emotional stability. Will you react with frustration, rigid expectations, or passive-aggressive comments? Or can you demonstrate flexible strength maintaining boundaries while adapting to changing circumstances with composure? Tyler from Denver experienced this test repeatedly with a woman he was dating. She would suggest meeting at one location, then text an hour before to change venues, or would adjust the timing of their plans last minute. His initial reaction was growing irritation and making comments about reliability and respecting other people's time. While these concerns were valid, his delivery communicated rigidity rather than healthy boundaries. We restructured his approach completely, maintaining his time boundaries clearly, but responding to changes with calm adaptability rather than frustration. The shift in her behavior was remarkable. The frequency of last-minute changes decreased dramatically as she unconsciously registered that he had passed the adaptability test while still maintaining self-respect. The fourth powerful testing mechanism involves observing how you handle her emotional fluctuations. When a woman suddenly expresses negative emotions, disagreement, or criticism toward you, this often serves as an assessment of your emotional stability and confidence. Will you become defensive, argumentative, or attempt to logically invalidate her feelings? Or can you remain steady and receptive without becoming emotionally reactive? This isn't about agreeing with everything she says. It's about demonstrating emotional solidity regardless of the emotional weather around you. Connor from Philadelphia faced this exact scenario when the woman he was dating began expressing doubts about their compatibility during what had been a positive dinner together. His instinctive response was to become defensive, listing reasons why her concerns were unfounded and trying to logically convince her that she was wrong. This approach actually intensified her doubts rather than alleviating them. When we identified this as an emotional stability test, he completely shifted his approach. The next time she expressed uncertainty, he remained calm and genuinely curious, exploring her perspective without becoming defensive or trying to change her mind. This response completely transformed their dynamic. Her expressions of doubt significantly decreased as she unconsciously registered his emotional strength. The fifth classic testing sign appears when she observes your interactions with others. How you treat service staff, handle challenging social situations, or respond to rudeness from strangers provides critical information about your character that can either be faked or disguised. When a woman seems particularly attentive to your social interactions, she's gathering data about who you really are, not just who you present yourself to be with her. Will you show the same respect to the waiter as you do to her? Will you maintain composure when faced with social friction or become easily flustered? Matt from Seattle didn't realize he was being evaluated when the woman he was dating suggested a restaurant with notoriously slow service for their third meeting. Throughout the evening, she seemed unusually attentive to his interactions with the staff as they experienced multiple service issues. He didn't recognize this heightened attention as the test it was, a deliberate opportunity to observe his character under mild stress. Fortunately, his natural respectful treatment of the staff and calm handling of the delays passed the test without him even realizing it was occurring. She later revealed that how men treat service staff was her non-negotiable character assessment, after a previous relationship with someone who was charming to her but consistently rude to others. What appeared to be a simple dinner choice was actually a carefully designed character evaluation. The sixth, subtle but powerful test involves creating situations that reveal your social calibration and awareness. When a woman introduces you to friends or family, suggests attending social gatherings, or creates group interactions, she's often unconsciously evaluating your social intelligence and adaptability across different contexts. Can you connect appropriately with different types of people? Do you become awkward, try too hard to impress, or completely change your personality in group settings? Or can you maintain authentic presence while adapting appropriately to social nuances? Jason from Atlanta faced this test when the woman he was dating invited him to a friend's dinner party just 2 weeks into their relationship. What seemed like a simple social invitation was actually a carefully designed opportunity to observe his social calibration. His initial approach was trying too hard to impress her friends with stories and humor that felt forced compared to his normal personality. When we identified this as a social calibration test, he completely restructured his approach, focusing on genuine connection rather than impression management, asking thoughtful questions instead of dominating conversation, and maintaining his authentic personality rather than performing. The results were transformative. Not only did her friends respond much more positively, but she later commented specifically on how much she appreciated his natural confidence in social settings. The seventh and perhaps most significant test involves observing your response to vulnerability and intimate disclosure. When a woman shares personal struggles, past wounds, or emotional challenges with you, she's not just connecting, she's unconsciously evaluating your emotional intelligence and trustworthiness. Will you dismiss her feelings, immediately jump to problem solving, or use her vulnerability against her later? Or can you demonstrate genuine presence, empathetic understanding, and appropriate emotional support? This test reveals your capacity for emotional depth and connection more powerfully than almost any other interaction. Sean from Denver completely misinterpreted this test when the woman he was dating began sharing childhood insecurities during their fourth date. His immediate response was to offer solutions and logical perspectives on why she shouldn't feel that way. While well-intentioned, this approach actually created emotional distance rather than connection. When we identified this as a vulnerability test, he completely recalibrated his approach, focusing on present, empathetic listening rather than problem-solving, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated genuine interest in her experience, and sharing appropriate vulnerability in return. The shift in their emotional connection was profound. What had been a pleasant but somewhat surface relationship deepened significantly as she unconsciously registered his emotional intelligence and trustworthiness. Now that we've identified these 7 common tests, let's explore exactly how to pass them with confidence and authenticity. The first essential strategy involves recognizing tests without reacting to them. Most men make a critical mistake when they identify a test. They either call it out directly, creating awkwardness and defensiveness, or they overcompensate with exaggerated responses that feel inauthentic. The key to passing these tests is subtle recognition without direct acknowledgement. When you notice testing behavior, maintain your composure and respond to the underlying psychology rather than the surface behavior, all without explicitly mentioning the test itself. James from Chicago transformed his dating experiences with this approach. When he began recognizing classic tests like sudden communication pullbacks or competition scenarios, his instinct was to call them out directly. "Are you testing me by mentioning your ex?" This created immediate tension and defensiveness. We completely restructured his approach, silently recognizing tests when they occurred, but responding to the underlying psychology rather than the surface behavior. When she mentioned male attention, he remained confidently unaffected without commenting on the test itself. When she pulled back communication, he maintained his normal rhythm without addressing the change directly. This subtle approach allowed him to pass tests consistently without creating the friction that direct confrontation inevitably produces. The second powerful strategy for passing these tests involves developing emotional non-reactivity. The fundamental purpose of most female testing is to evaluate your emotional stability under pressure. Can your emotional state be easily destabilized by external circumstances? Developing genuine emotional steadiness requires more than surface techniques. It requires reconditioning your internal responses to challenging situations. Start by practicing brief pauses before responding to emotionally charged situations, allowing the initial reactive impulse to pass before choosing your response. Then focus on maintaining consistent energy regardless of the emotional stimuli you be receiving. Alex from Nashville completely transformed his relationship patterns with this practice. His typical response to testing behavior had been immediate emotional reactivity, anxiety when communication pulled back, jealousy when competition was introduced, frustration when plans changed. We implemented a systematic approach to developing emotional non-reactivity, practicing the pause technique to create space between stimulus and response, focusing on physical relaxation during challenging moments, and maintaining awareness of his baseline emotional state regardless of external triggers. The results were remarkable. Women began responding to him with noticeably more interest and respect as he demonstrated genuine emotional stability rather than reactivity. The third essential strategy involves maintaining consistent identity across contexts. Many tests are specifically designed to evaluate whether your character and behavior remain consistent in different situations or under various pressures. Do you become a completely different person around her friends? Does your confidence disappear when challenged? The key to passing these consistency tests is developing genuine congruence between your inner values and outer expression, so that your core remains steady regardless of changing external circumstances. Noah from Philadelphia dramatically improved his dating experiences by implementing this approach. His pattern had been subtle but significant personality shifts across different contexts: more confident one-on-one, more reserved in groups, more deferential with strong personalities. We focused on identifying his core values and authentic self-expression, then practicing consistent representation of these qualities regardless of the social environment. The change in how women responded to him was immediate and clear. His dates began showing significantly more interest and investment once they registered his consistent identity across various situations. This consistency created a foundation of trust and respect that superficial confidence never could. The fourth transformative strategy for passing female tests involves mastering the balance between boundaries and flexibility. Many tests are specifically designed to evaluate whether you can maintain core boundaries while still demonstrating reasonable adaptability. The key distinction that most men miss is the difference between flexible strength and rigid weakness. The former involves maintaining essential boundaries while adapting gracefully to changing circumstances, while the latter involves either complete inflexibility or boundary collapse under pressure. David from Seattle completely transformed his dating experiences with this balanced approach. His pattern had oscillated between rigid insistence on his preferences and complete capitulation to avoid conflict. We developed his capacity for flexible strength, identifying his genuine, non-negotiable boundaries, while creating space for adaptation around his preferences. When the woman he was dating changed plans last minute, he maintained his time boundary. "I can meet until 9 p.m. as I have an early morning," while flexibly adapting to her venue change. This balanced response demonstrated both self-respect and reasonable accommodation, passing her test with flying colors. The result was a noticeable increase in her respect and consistent behavior, as she unconsciously registered his balanced strength. The fifth essential strategy involves developing genuine outcome independence. Many female tests are specifically designed to evaluate whether your emotional state and behavior are dependent on particular outcomes or her responses. Can you remain centered and authentic regardless of whether she responds positively? Or does your confidence collapse when validation isn't immediately forthcoming? True outcome independence isn't about pretending not to care. It's about maintaining your core sense of worth regardless of external validation or specific results. Kevin from Chicago transformed his entire dating approach with this principle. His emotional state had been completely dependent on how women responded to him, elated with positive attention, devastated by rejection or distance. We completely reconstructed his relationship with outcomes, focusing on self-validated actions rather than external results, finding meaning in the process rather than attachment to specific outcomes, and building a foundation of self-worth independent of others' responses. The change in how women reacted to him was remarkable. His dates began showing significantly more interest and investment once they unconsciously registered that his value was an identity dependent on their validation. This genuine outcome independence created an attractive gravity that reactive neediness never could. The sixth powerful strategy for passing female tests involves mastering the art of authentic vulnerability. Many tests are designed to evaluate whether you can balance emotional openness with appropriate strength. Most men make one of two critical mistakes: either suppressing vulnerability completely to appear strong, or displaying excessive emotional neediness in an attempt to connect. The key to passing these tests is calibrated vulnerability. Sharing authentic feelings and experiences while maintaining emotional self-responsibility and strength. Luke from Atlanta completely transformed his relationship patterns with this balanced approach. His tendency had been emotional guardedness, sharing facts but rarely feelings, creating a connection barrier that women often tested by withdrawing or creating emotional pressure. We developed his capacity for calibrated vulnerability, sharing meaningful personal experiences and genuine feelings while maintaining emotional strength and self-responsibility. When the woman he was dating opened up about past wounds, he responded with both empathetic understanding and appropriate self-disclosure, creating genuine emotional intimacy without neediness. This balanced vulnerability passed her test completely, creating a depth of connection that emotional guardedness or neediness could never achieve. The final and perhaps most important strategy involves developing genuine self-validation. At their core, all female tests evaluate one fundamental quality: Are you a man who derives his sense of worth primarily from within, or do you need constant external validation to feel confident and secure? Developing true self-validation isn't about positive thinking or affirmations. It's about building an authentic relationship with yourself based on living according to your own values and standards, regardless of external feedback. Mason from Portland transformed his entire dating experience with this foundational approach. His pattern had been seeking constant validation through female approval, adjusting his behavior based on reactions and measuring his worth through their responses. We completely reconstructed his relationship with validation, establishing internal metrics of value based on his own standards, focusing on self-respect through integrity with personal values, and developing comfort with his authentic self-expression regardless of others' responses. The change in how women related to him was profound. His dates began demonstrating significantly more respect, investment, and genuine interest once they unconsciously registered his self-validated confidence. This authentic self-approval created a natural attraction that approval-seeking behavior never could. Throughout this exploration of female testing patterns and response strategies, one core truth remains consistent. These tests aren't obstacles to avoid, but opportunities to demonstrate your genuine character and strength. By understanding the underlying psychology behind these tests and developing authentic responses rather than tactical techniques, you transform not just how women perceive you, but your entire relationship with yourself. The most powerful position isn't trying to avoid tests, but welcoming them as chances to demonstrate who you really are. If this video opened your eyes to dynamics you've been experiencing in your relationships, hit that like button so more guys can discover these insights. Drop a comment below sharing which of these tests you've encountered most frequently. I read and respond personally, and if you want more content that cuts through the confusion and gives you the real truth about female psychology, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I am committed to bringing you the honest insights that most relationship advice completely misses. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.